Happy Wednesday to you folks, and welcome to Got Your Back, Lebrun and Rishaug. Great podcast on the way today. Edmonton Oilers General Manager and President of Hockey Operations, Ken Holland, joins Pierre, Mike Johnson, and myself to talk the upcoming trade deadline for the Edmonton Oilers. All eyes on Ken Holland. What's he going to be able to do to get this team that's clearly in its window over the hump? We grilled him on a bunch of those issues and those topics. Team on a real heater right now, playing extremely well. Got Your Back brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. They provide equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. What sets them apart, though, is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. They have it proudly displayed on the walls of each of their branches. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they never let the customer down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need and when they need it. No excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude and truly believes their customer success is their success. As we say good morning to the fellas, both joining us from Toronto, Pierre Lebrun and Mike Johnson. Mike, for a guy that just got back from Florida, there is not even a hint of a tan. You are way too pasty to have just gotten back from Florida.
Listen, Shoggy, when I go away, I go to work. I'm not there on vacation. I'm there. Listen, you don't get a tan sitting inside the arena. And that's where I sit 8 hours a day at these All-Star games. So you're right. It was a quick trip. Like I got down Thursday night at midnight. I left Saturday right after the game at 9 o'clock to go back to Toronto. So it was a couple work days. Interesting stuff though, Pierre. And it's like, I don't want to go too far down the All-Star rabbit hole.
Neither does Pierre.
Because it's not for Pierre. It's not for you, Ryan.
I know.
It's not for me.
I know.
It's for kids. It's for corporate. It's for new fans. It's for the event. I have no problem whatsoever in the 3-on-3 game stuff. Makes sense. Was actually very interesting. Kind of exciting. Guys try hard enough for my liking. Not really hard, unless you're Dylan Larkin. Then you try really hard. But the skills thing is tricky. It's hard to hit that out of the park. I think they just got to go back to the basics. Give me fastest skater. Give me hardest shot. Give me accuracy shooting. Give me a breakaway challenge where the goaltenders are actually trying, as are the shooters. And then you can sprinkle in one or two other ones. But just make that the core four things. Make it 90 minutes. Put a DJ or Justin Bieber or whoever playing all game long. And just ramp up the pace and energy. But beyond that, I have no it is what it is. Great to see the guys have the event and celebrate it. The Sid Ovi thing was really cool. But Pierre, that's my only soapbox moment. I will not talk about it again.
It's Harry Styles now, by the way, not Bieber. It's Harry Styles.
Shoggy, where is it going to be next year? Didn't you not see Justin Bieber say welcome to Toronto next year?
Yeah,
so in fact, next year I think it will be Justin Bieber.
I still like the Biebs, by the way, for the record.
So do I.
Sorry, Pierre.
Listen, no, I made a point once again of not watching a single second of any of it. But
Lebrun
and this is the point. This is the point I'm getting at is that through osmosis, the only reason I knew that some of these things that happened, particularly in the skills on I guess that was the Friday, is through my teenage kids, and through so my daughter had a hockey tournament north of Toronto, and her and her teammates. We were having lunch for one of the games, and all they could talk about is this happened and that happened, and so I was actually gleaning my information without having seen a single second of the event through the expressions of my daughter and their friends. And it was kind of neat from that perspective. And
what was their perception?
That's it.
What were they saying?
Well, obviously when the women players were part of it and Sarah Nurse, all that was a big highlight for sure. And that's really cool. And to be honest, that to me is the coolest part of it all. But in general, and so that's why I know there's a reason for this event and it connects with kids. It's just obviously for the rest of us. Complete nonsense, and I refuse to watch.
Wait a second.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. We'll move on from that. Right. Listen, lots of other stuff to get to, so let's get to the breakdown, guys. Brought to you by Pro Hockey Life, our good friends at Pro Hockey Life. The drive towards the deadline and the playoffs, it is on. So what a great time to outfit yourself with gear from your favorite team. Are they going to make it, your favorite team? Are they going to miss? Is it going to be close? Go grab a jersey. Throw your favorite player's name on the back and cheer loudly. Pro Hockey Life can help you do that. They've got a great selection of team apparel, hats, t-shirts, souvenirs, everything you need for yourself or the giant hockey fan in your life. They've got 16 locations across the country. Pro Hockey Life, like you and like us, is obsessed with the game. Not necessarily the All-Star game, but the game. Although they like it because you can buy All-Star jerseys as well. Well, since we're talking about All-Star guys, let's hit quickly on one of the biggest voices in the game having something to say about the structure of the playoffs. Sidney Crosby talking about the 1 versus 8 and how we'd like to see them go back to that. Gary Bettman says, there are some issues with doing that. Johnny, I think it's a no-brainer. I think a lot of the hockey world feels like it's a no-brainer. But there seems to be this kind of old school pushback mentality from the league to not really be that open to it. What do you think, Johnny?
Well, I think you could not be like old school mentality would be going back to 1 and 8, right? This is a new school mentality. So I feel like I'm on the island here. Like, honestly, I think I'm the only one who's like, no, I'm okay with it the way it is.
Really?
I am. I think I'm okay with Calgary and Edmonton playing in the first round. I'm okay with Toronto having to play Tampa or Boston. Give me New York, New Jersey. These kind of more geographical rivalries that will be enhanced by playing in the playoffs, which will happen more often, not guaranteed, but more often in the current format. I'm also of the mindset, like, yes, occasionally Toronto, for instance, if they finish second in the Atlantic, will maybe have a tougher matchup against Tampa. If Toronto wants to win the Stanley Cup, they probably have to beat Tampa and Boston anyways. So whether it's rounds 2 and 3 or 1 and 2, they're going to have to go through those guys regardless. And that won't always be the case. I also think if you re-rack the Eastern Conference right now, they're like 3 of the 4 matchups are the same. Like, it's not going to make a huge difference. I like the idea of the geographic rivalries having more often, a greater chance of happening more often. I'm not bent by it because every year you could look at it and say, this year it'd be good. This year it wouldn't. This year would work out this way for one team. The next year it might go the other way. There's just no guarantees on how it would play out. So I'm differing from Sid, Pierre. I don't mind it the way it is.
I would go back to 1-8, but I'll get to all this in a moment. It's interesting. You guys may remember right before Christmas, I wrote a story. I write it every year. Some of the things that I would change, and in that was the playoff format. I will tell you that I traded emails with Sidney Crosby about that piece, and because I know that he digs in on this stuff, and that was obviously one that was that way he supported among a couple of other ones. So I'm not surprised that he came out and talked about that publicly. But
I emailed Connor McDavid once, just FYI.
Well,
I walked past him in the hallway.
But what I would say is the point about the geographical map. I grew up, I grew up watching hockey in the late 70s, early 80s, but particularly in the 80s, where you had the divisional matchups: Edmonton, Calgary, and the Smythe, and the Winnipeg Jets. Boston, Montreal, or Montreal, Quebec, Hartford in the Adams division, the Leafs in the old Norris making the playoffs with 47 points or whatever it was. Those were great, but that's not what we have right now. What we have right now is in between what it should be. It's like, make up your mind. And so I would be okay if they went back to the actual divisional playoffs, where you had to, there is no wild card. You have to play your teams to get to the Final Four. I'm fine with that. Not as much as I like 1 against 8, but I'm fine. We don't have that right now. We have this bizarre wild card thing, which to me throws everything out of whack. But before we hammer the league again for that, let's remember the background on this. It's really because of the NHLPA that we have the wild card. Okay? When we came out of the lockout in 2012 and realignment was, remember Columbus shifted and Detroit shifted and all this stuff happened. Part of your realignment was this new playoff format. And I don't know if you guys remember this. I know I certainly can't remember. I just about fell off my chair. But after all of the realignment had been announced, 4 or 5 days later, the NHLPA put out a release saying they voted it down. That it wasn't going to happen until they rejigged it. And the way that they rejigged it is that the wild card became a part of it. So I know there's a lot of little background there, and the lockout's blurry for a lot of us. But the reason we actually have the wild card is because the PA felt that there would be an imbalance if we went to true divisional playoffs, like the Norris division in the 80s some years, where some crappier teams made the postseason.
So you'd be okay with just staying in your division and a 47-point team making the playoffs, but you're not okay with the wild card where an 86-point team in the other division has to cross over to bump the 47-point team out. That's what you're saying.
At this point, if it matters so much to you to have the wild card to make things more fair, then 1-8 is the most fair of all.
But then I'm doing both.
1-8 is democracy at its greatest.
Well, then do 1/16, Pierre, and then who cares? Don't even have conferences or divisions.
Well, The reason they don't do 116
because travel.
Travel, yeah.
Yes, I know the answer to the question. I'm like a lawyer. I don't ask questions I don't know the answer to, right, Shaggy? I watched that on a show somewhere. So, but like you're trying to do both, right? Like you're trying to serve getting the best 8 teams or something close to the best 8 teams in the playoffs, but also have the divisional aspect to it. That's what the wild card brings. I guess I'm saying, I'm not even arguing with you. Like 1-8 is fine with me. I'm just saying the wild card stuff is not like this, terrible experience that's ruining the playoffs, because it's not. In fact, the NHL probably has, even though I'm a hockey person, the best first and second rounds of the playoffs of any league that goes 7 games.
For sure.
So
totally
that part is, it does work.
And we don't have time for this conversation, but I'm telling you, this is probably coming, and Gary Bettman doesn't want this to happen. We know from the conversations we've all had, but expanding the playoff format, that discussion is coming. And the reason it's going to come is because the US TV networks, the new partners, are going to start to look at this and say, look at baseball and the popularity with what they've added. Why aren't we doing this? I'm telling you.
That would bother me so much.
It's coming.
I play all year long. I'm the 7th. Like, think about last year in the East. Then we'll get off this, Shuggy. Last year, 7th place team in the East had 106 points.
That was a one-off last year, though.
I don't care if it's a one-off. It's still an off. 10th place team had 71.
What about this year?
You're going to tell me I got to beat that team 2 out of 3 times to go forward when I just beat them by 35 points over 82 games? Forget.
What about this year?
Well, yeah, but like, it doesn't matter about this year. If you want to make the playoffs, finish 8th. Don't finish 9th or 10th. You have 80 games to figure it out. Half the league makes the playoffs. Don't give me that nonsense. I get it for money. That's a different conversation, and I always like talking about money.
It's money and competitive balance, right? Exactly.
But it's not about fairness and equitability of the playoff format, because some team is going to be the 7th ranked team and get absolutely take the short shifts because they're going to get hot goalie's going to lose 2 games and they're going to be out.
I love it. You guys just hijacked the hell out of this podcast today. This is great. By the way, Pierre dropped Sid's name, and Johnny with the I don't ask questions I don't already know the answer to. That's going in the Got Your Back Hall of Fame cocky edition. Right there. So Zuby, make a mark on those 2 comments.
That's like from every lawyer show ever.
I know. I don't ask questions I don't already know the answer to. Well, I wonder if Ken Holland knew that. Okay, listen, we're going to have to sort of do quick hitter style on the rest of the stuff. Let's get to some other stuff here. Okay, Timo Meier, Erik Karlsson, last night, big games from both of them. Both of them are on the trade bait board. Meier, I think we kind of understand there's a real good chance this is going to happen. Pierre, you've said that Karlsson is more likely an offseason deal. I don't know, man. He's having this year. He's having this resurgent moment where he's rejuvenated. Like, I know the money seems impossible and it's cap gymnastics, but I don't know, Johnny, like, the way he's playing, does a team not just try and figure out how to add this guy the way he's going?
You can try to figure it out, but it's almost impossible. And that's what Pierre is talking about. Just because there's more money available in the summer as contracts expire. But you're right. Like, the need, if you're going to go get him, you got to go get him now for this moment when he's playing this well. You go get him in the summer, like, yeah, he'll be good again next year. Will he be this good? I don't know. He's never been this good before. So I appreciate the need to do it now. I also appreciate the almost impossibility for any good team that he would waive to go to figure out the money to get it done now, unless you cut it twice, and no team is eating that much salary for that many years.
Yeah, it's hard to cut twice when there's that much term left. Yeah. Listen, when Karlsson was on this podcast, Ryan, he stressed the desire to win again.
He did.
And so, or he's never won a cup, but what I mean is the desire to be on a team with that has a chance to win. That was interesting because it certainly takes away at least one layer, which was, is he even willing to move San Jose where his family's happy and comfortable? I think the answer is clearly yes, based on that interview. But I think the math is just, I've looked at it so many times without knowing for sure how much San Jose would eat, but, and here's the thing, if you're a team that's thinking, well, we'll go after this summer. Okay. But if you're a playoff team that's thinking we'll go after this summer, he might be playing the best hockey ever right now.
Exactly.
Right now.
It's going to be bad math whenever you try and do it. It's crappy algebra in March and it's crappy algebra in August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like summer school, crappy algebra in August. The question I would think, though, if Pierre, Timo Meier, he's playing amazing. Like every team that has a shot should go after him, and they might eat some stuff, and his contract does expire, so there's flexibility there. But if I'm Timo Meier, I don't know if I might make the team qualify me at 10, make 10 next year, and then sign my extension beyond next year. You know what I mean? Like
when the cap's finally going up,
grab the $10 million 1 year hit, and then get the extension that I can sign this summer after I sign my qualifier for next year. You know what I mean? Like double dip that way if we're talking about money.
Yeah, but I think the teams, MJ, that are looking at trading for him are really hoping, and I think they will get permission from the Sharks to have this conversation, but they really want to extend him as part of it and make it a hockey deal. That's why the Devils make a lot of sense. I mean, listen, Tom Fitzgerald didn't mention his name, but when I interviewed him recently, he said, I want a top 6 winger, but I don't want to do a rental deal. Like, I mean,
who's out there, right?
I mean, it's sort of obvious with some of the guys that he's looking at.
8 years times 8.75.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So, what's the number where his agent Claude Lemieux can say, "We'll forego"?
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. Like not many wingers make over 9, so he's great.
That's tricky for the Devils because maybe that's too high a number.
And they got to get Jesper Bratt signed.
Bang, and Jack Hughes, is that an artificial ceiling within your forward group at $8 million a year? Who knows?
I don't like the artificial ceiling. I don't like it, Pierre. What did Jack Hughes have on? What was Jack Hughes' best year when he signed that contract? Was it 61 points?
They totally.
Don't tell me, Brad Marchand, you took a discount and you're a good guy for your team. You had a 63-point career year and you've become a Hall of Fame player afterwards. But based on that deal, don't tell me Nate McKinnon took a hometown discount. He was off a 61 point. Is he going to be a good player now? He's a great player. Don't tell me that Jack Hughes if I had 61 points, then he's an artificial cap. When I got an 85 2 years in a row on my Jesper Bratt, that cap does not apply to me. Sorry, Shoggy. Second.
No, that's fine. Could there be a year here in Edmonton where Draisaitl makes more than McDavid for a year?
There should be. There 100% should be.
About the season.
Yes.
And that's why Bratt didn't sign a long-term extension last summer because my understanding is that very conversation is what hampered that negotiation. Is that I don't think the Devils view Bratt as a player that, even though they love the player, they want him to be there long term. I don't think they view him making more than their number one center.
Patrick Kane, Pierre, you were reporting that an answer coming in the near term here from him and his agent on what the future holds. So let's push past that news. Johnny, where's the right fit? Where's he willing to go?
To move.
And he wants to move. If he does.
Yeah.
So where is it, Johnny? What's the fit?
You know what, quite frankly, with his health situation, like, of course, Patrick Kane healthy is incredible. I think the Rangers would make sense. The Panarin connection makes sense. They have young assets to trade
because of the injury. Like
I think the ask becomes way less because you're not getting Patrick Kane, the guy who he's been his whole career. You're getting, a compromised version of him. And I would be really leery of trading, as much as everyone loves Patrick Kane, the player. I would be concerned about trading big assets for him as a rental this year, given his health situation.
Yeah, I think Dallas could be interesting. I chatted with Jim Neal earlier this week, and obviously he's not going to name names, but he did speak about conceptually the idea that, boy, if his core is not only signed, but Rupe Hintz' extension kicks in next year. It's a $5 million raise. A lot of GMs are trying to make hockey deals. I think Dallas is the opposite. I think Dallas, a rental actually makes more sense based on the cap not really going up. And the Stars have a need on their second line. It's hard to believe that you could put Patrick Kane on the second line, but
Pierre, respectfully of Patrick Kane, the way he's played this year, it's not at the level of a first round, like a high-end first-line player he's been his whole life because he's not healthy.
So I kind of like the fit in Dallas where they've had a need there all year. Obviously, a third broker team ends up making Patrick Kane, if you involve a third team, a $2.65 million player or whatever. Gurianov perhaps gets dealt. I'm just trying to make all the pieces fit for Dallas, but I actually think that's a potential fit there. And again, that's if Patrick Kane and his health, after they have that final conversation, him and Pat Brisson, and which is coming soon, Pat Brisson said yesterday, that's if he wants to get dealt. We'll see.
Let's handicap the Rocket race here, Johnny. You got McDavid, 41. He's got 8 in his last 12. Pasternak, 38. Hughes, 35. Hughes just ridiculous.
Amazing.
Crazy.
Here recently. Tage Thompson's cooled a little bit. He's sitting at 34. Connor McDavid's to lose here, but do you think that he can be caught? Can Pastrnak grab him, you think?
Sure, that's one good game for Pasta and a hat trick, and they're there. I just the volume of chances that McDavid creates, and even against Detroit, first game post All-Star break, he didn't score, but he had multiple good looks, and I just he would be a heavy favorite. He'd be minus 280, minus 320, like he'd be a heavy favorite. Pasta's probably the other guy who catches him. Jack Hughes is going to score 53 goals. It's going to be incredible. I think Thompson slowing down and also maybe being injured a little bit will hurt his chances. It kind of feels like a two-person race with McDavid, although it's just 3 goals. It's just every single night. And that power play is ridiculous in Edmonton. He'll get lots and lots there as well.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with McDavid. And part of it for me, I know this sounds silly, but I think every single game the Oilers play right to the end will be significant, not just to secure their playoff spot, but maybe their actual seeding within that crazy Pacific Division. Whereas at some point, the Bruins, I think, put
it in cruise control last 10 games.
Yeah, they're going to have to start doing some sports science with their top players in March and figuring out what's best for them. So I think that could be a factor.
Bo Horvat's new contract, does it change the way the trade looks? And there was a lot of discussion about not being able to negotiate with him ahead of time. If you can negotiate an extension, like, should there not have been some sort of a conditional pick attached where if you sign him, then this also comes back in the deal? It just seems to me like I thought the trade was a pretty good trade for the Islanders in the first place, just with a player of Horvat's caliber as a rental. And then you add that extension onto it, Johnny. Like, should there have been a little bit of, more on the bone, more meat on the bone for Vancouver with this deal getting done?
I know they weren't allowed to negotiate. There probably was a sense of the ballpark that would require to get him signed.
Are you saying there's tampering in the NHL?
I'm not saying there's tampering. I think there's creative, intuitive exchanges that might help facilitate these kind of contracts.
So if you know that's going on and you're the Vancouver Canucks, why don't you say, here's the conditional? Like, would that have broken the deal?
Like, I think they're okay with it. I think they probably wanted publicly to say, we're not letting it happen because we're like protecting our guy. We want to give our best foot forward, but we know what's kind of happening and whatever, we're going to let him go anyways. I think having Bo Horvat on your team long term is obviously makes the trade better for the Islanders. He's a very good player. I can't believe I'm ever going to say this, but I agree with Lou Lamoriello. Like, it's a little too long and a little too expensive for a guy who's going to be in his mid-30s, who's never beat 61 points before this year, who's never scored more than 31 goals before this year, who's not a great defensive player, albeit he's great in the face-off circle. So, the contract, having him secured, great. The dollar value, it's a big one. Good for Bo and his team. Like, that is awesome for Bo Horvat. But Pierre, I don't know if that contract makes it a slam dunk win for the Islanders because it's a big deal.
Yeah, you love the part that it's not a rental, but it is too much money in my mind. Now, the cap is finally going to go up in 2 years.
True.
But so maybe we'll revisit it and see. But still, I mean, this is the first time Horvat has scored at this level. And it's too much money, but it was always going to be that once you thought that you were going to extend him, because to forego July 1st there's a tax to pay for that. That's just the reality of it. And they paid the tax. But as far as the Canucks and the return, I mean, I think we've learned by now in the Tage Thompson, the Ryan O'Reilly deal, sometimes let's be more patient when we judge deals. But the point here is that the real turning point on this trade for me will be whether this first round pick is, mid first round this year or unprotected 24 pick.
All right.
And that's the key element of this deal. And we can't answer that right now.
It's funny you don't mention Atu Ratu, the top prospect. I think it kind of hinges on him becoming a player. Sure. I guess him or the first rounder. But anyways, we'll see.
Yeah.
Couple of pieces for the future for the Vancouver Canucks, and the Islanders lock in their guy. That segues nicely into our red card, yellow card, no card segment, boys. Oh, yeah, we got one this week. I know you love it. You brought it up, Johnny. Lou Lamoriello Like the day they signed this guy to a monster deal, huge trade, good day for the organization, should be rah, 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 right? Well, here's the deal. They don't release terms of the contract. So a reporter in the scrum with Lou Lamoriello tried to ask, and here's what old school Lou had to say.
All I can tell you is it's too long and it's too much money. So I mean, you want the truth?
No. Well, that was going to lead into my next point.
Next question.
Next question. So too long, too much money from the guy that just handed the deal to the new player that walked into the franchise. So happy to be there. Red card, yellow card, no card. Johnny?
First off, red card for whoever laughed that hard. That's not that funny.
Wasn't that funny?
Ejection. You're out of the scrum. Okay, he's not that funny. There's the red card. For the comments, I'm going to say yellow card because it's a bit offside. If a different GM with a different kind of track record would say, oh yeah, the deal I just gave out is a terrible one, then you'd be like, well, what the hell are you giving it out for? But because it's Lou, somehow it's okay. But I give it a yellow, not a red, because I'm never going to fault someone for being honest. And I appreciate the candor and the reality for GMs that, like, yeah, I'm giving out deals I would prefer not to give out, but these are the ones I have to give out because the nature of the market. So just a yellow card for me.
Pierre?
Yeah, so I'm going to go no card because I think it's clear that he's trying to be funny in the moment. Where I would give a yellow card is if there was a different question you're asking me, which is why aren't the Islanders announcing the terms in AV?
Like what are we doing?
That's where the card should be. Come on.
Yes.
2023, man.
Gives you an opportunity to break a little nugget of information.
Well,
Pierre.
I know.
That's
It's
one
fine
thing
for
you
me.
can
I'm
chase.
just saying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One sec. I got unplugged here. Oh, there we go.
What do you got? What do you think, Shaggy?
No, I'm yellow card. I mean, I know he's trying to be funny, and I know it's Lou being Lou. But at the same time, the guy just got traded there. He's getting adjusted. I think it was just one of those things that's a little bit unnecessary. But it's Lou being Lou, and I agree with you, Johnny. He's being honest. Yellow card for me. I don't love the comment. By the way, Horvat the next day, did you hear what he said? He was like, it's not untrue. Horvat kind of agreed with it after the fact. So
now his agent Pat Morris is saying, Bo, what are you talking about?
The ultimate arbiter.
Everybody, listen, the more you say it's too much money for too long, the more Pat Morris is saying, boy, did I ever do a great job.
Man, that's how I roll. That is how I roll.
Pat
the
was my
ultimate
former
arbiter
agent,
here.
so we'll
on Got Your Back, of course, is Terry Ryan, Ted Hitchcock from Shoresy. By the way, Crave just announcing Shoresy will be back for a second season, so looking forward to that. Here is our ultimate arbiter on Lou.
Regarding the Lou Lamoriello comment on Bo Horvat. On the one hand, this is a near idiotic quote from a GM who just locked up an important piece of his team's puzzle for an extended period of time. You'd think you'd want to make a player of this ilk feel as comfortable as possible, not alienate him and add public pressure. On the other hand, this is clearly just the latest in another bad attempt at humor from an NHL GM trying to add some levity to the fact NHL contracts are longer and richer than ever. In the words of author Stuart Stafford, separate text from context and all that remains is a con. In other words, context is important and Lou is merely making a joke. A bad one, mind you, but a joke all the same. Yellow card for stupidity. Final answer.
Wow, the ultimate arbiter was in a mood today, fellas.
I enjoyed the text and the context, and then he went with a stupidity hammer at the end. He was getting all like lyrical for us.
Definitely a little rough.
I disagree on one thing. I actually think top NHL players are underpaid, but let's not get on a whole tangent about that.
Oh boy. Franchise tag? We got time for that? No, we're not even.
So Pierre wants the guys at the bottom of the roster to make $250,000. Thanks, Pierre. Thanks.
Yeah, I do think there's a little too much, sharing of the pie. NHL.
Too much meat in the middle class for Pierre.
I think Connor McDavid should be making $25 million a year, but anyway, that's a conversation.
And paying as little tax as possible, says Pierre.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Of course, I say that. Yes,
yeah, that's right up Johnny's alley.
Yeah.
All right, guys, great podcast. Lots more to come here, folks. That was the breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life. On the other side of the break, Oilers general manager, president of hockey operations Ken Holland joins us from Philadelphia. We want to tell you about a truly Canadian company. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. I've been to the offices. I've seen how they proudly display that on the wall at each branch. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they'll never let their customers down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need when they need it. They don't make excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that the success of their customer is their success. You can't get much more Canadian than that. All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back, brought to you by Liberty Smart Security, a company that specializes in having your back. High quality, advanced security systems for your home or your business. Liberty Smart Security uses leading edge technology to protect the things that you value most in your life. Your home, your business, well, it's your castle. So protect it with Liberty Smart Security. Visit libertysecurity.ca. Really pleased that Ken Holland was able to take some time. Oilers out on a Eastern road trip right now. Played last night in Detroit, caught a late flight into Philadelphia, and up early this morning to join us was Ken Holland. So it'll be a real interesting trade deadline for the Oilers. Lots of scuttlebutt. Will it be a forward? Will it be a defenseman? What's the addition going to be? We get into that and much more with Ken Holland, courtesy Liberty Smart Security. One of the hottest teams in the National Hockey League right now is Ken Holland's Edmonton Oilers. 8-0-1 in your last 9 games played, Ken. The team has really found its stride in a lot of ways. You know, when you look back to earlier this year at times that you were struggling and then evaluate the way your team is playing night to night right now, what do you like most about what's changed in your group here?
Well, I mean, since Christmas, I think we're 11-3-2 in those 16 games. In 11 of them, we've given up 2 goals or less in regulation. A couple of overtime losses to Colorado and Columbus. But when you start giving up 2 or less in 11 out of 16, it gives you an opportunity to put something together. Obviously, with our power play being number 1 in the league, and then the way Connor and Leon are playing. You're going to get some goals. So I would say to you probably our commitment to defense, keeping the puck out of the net. Got healthy, in November there. I think we had 4 of our top 9 forwards out at the same time. Kane, McLeod, Fogle, and Yamamoto. And in a cap world, it's hard to be really deep. So when you lose 4 of your top 9 forwards, it's taxi. But I also think the Kane injury gave us an opportunity to have some cap space. We called up Janmark. We gave Klim Kostin an opportunity, and those 2 players have given us some more depth. So I think it's been a combination of a lot of things, but I think the key thing is the commitment to keeping the puck out of our net.
Kenny,
Yep.
you meant talk about the defense, keeping pucks out of the net. Of course, that's team defense, but part of that's goaltending as well. And, Jack, you brought in to be the number 1 guy. Stuart Skinner ends up at the All-Star game, but Jack's got his game together in the last month and a half, as well as the team being better defensively. Did you do anything to talk to him, to help him try to find his game, to get it back to where you want it and need it to be?
I only talked to him a couple of times. I think early in the year, what I find quite often, not all the time, but quite often, when a player signs probably the biggest contract of their career, and they go somebody and there's high expectations, it's a lot of pressure. And certainly he came from a pressure situation in Toronto, but I think he was a career 9-12 goaltender. He came in, and I think it was probably Jack wasn't on top of his game, but we were giving up too many grade A's early in the year, and I think that he's just gotten comfortable. I know he's got a great relationship with our goalie coach, and I just think I think he's won 8 in a row now. And I just think he's probably found that mental sweet spot where he's coming to the rink every day feeling good about himself, and he's on top of his game.
Ken, I was chatting with one of your GM colleagues, Ron Francis, last night right before his game on Long Island, and I kind of got the sense from him when we were talking about the Pacific Division and how tight the standings are there, that wanting to get through the next couple of weeks of games before deciding what he was going to do deadline-wise seemed like the route that he was going to go. Do you feel like you're in the same boat, or is it more if there's things that you've been working on here all this time, if they finally come together, you're ready to go through with it?
Well, I go historically. History says that most of whatever is going to happen at the trade deadline is going to happen, in the last few days, or you guys always have shows. I mean, there's a reason why you have shows on deadline day, because there's deals made on deadline day. If there wasn't deals made on deadline day, you guys wouldn't have shows. So
Yeah, we would.
yeah. So and lots of people have, they're down in the south of the border, they're having, and ESPN's having a trade deadline show. So, history suggests that most of the deals are going to come, March 1st, March 2nd, and March 3rd. And there's the odd deal that happens in advance. And I think it happens. The why that happens is, because the league is so tight, there's probably some teams that feel they're out. There's a few teams that feel they're in, and there's lots of teams that aren't sure where they are. Are they a buyer or are they a seller? And the market sort of has to show itself. I think early on, if you're 2-3 weeks in advance of the deadline, if you're a seller, you ask for a high price. I mean, that's sort of, and then as you start to get near the deadline, you find the price point. So, I've talked to many GMs here over the last 2 weeks. We had our pro scout meetings 10 days ago. Because we're in LTI with the Clefbaum injury, we started the year on opening day with 21 player roster, 12 forwards, 7D, and two defensemen. When Yamamoto gets healthy, we'll probably have to be similar to that. We're going to be dollar in, dollar out, so that makes it even more difficult to make a deal. But certainly, I'm working the phones. I'd like to see if I can find a little something or some move that can impact our team. We'll see.
Ken, we drew straws as to who was going to ask you about the blue line and Jake Chychrun, and I clearly lost because here we go. Listen, I know it's tough and you can't necessarily talk about specific players, so I'll more ask bigger picture. A defensive defenseman, conventional wisdom with your team is that maybe that's more the style you might look to add at the deadline. But I wonder, with a player like Chychrun who's available, that's not necessarily his pure skill set.
You're trying to get Kenny fined, aren't you, Ryan?
No. I got to deal with him too often to get him fined. I guess what I'm asking here, Ken, is are you set on a specific style of defenseman that you think you want to add, or are you open to guys with different skill sets? It doesn't necessarily have to be that pure defensive guy. Where's your head at on what you need on the blue line?
Well, I would say to you, I'm watching right now. Actually, I think we got two great stories on the back end since Christmas. I think Phil Broberg's been a real good story for us. Let's see, plus 10 in 24 games. He's 21 years of age. Certainly, I understand. I've been around a long time, so I understand playoff experience, and bringing in a defenseman that's got playoff experience, has been through playoff series and understands what playoffs is all about, versus a young player that's never been in the playoffs. Vinny Desharnais also, I think, has been a real good story for us. I think both those guys, Vinny's 6'7", Phil's 6'3". They give us length in the back end. Phil can really skate. They give us mobility. So, the coach has been going with 11 and 7. So certainly, whether it's forwards or defense, I am talking, and it's my job to be aware of who's available and eventually what the price might be. I'm going to answer your question with one last, irregardless of names. We're dollar in, dollar out. So we start bringing in people with big cap numbers. We're going to have to do some real gymnastics here to move people out. So, when you're in an LTI situation like we are, it's much more difficult at the trade deadline. I'm not sure if you and I start out the year at $80 million at the start of the season, and I'm in LTI and you're not, that $2.5 million can grow up to a $10 million player at the trade deadline. When you're in LTI, that doesn't move. That just sits at $80 million, and I've just got the value of the contract. So being in LTI makes it more interesting, more difficult to make trades. So I'm watching our team again. 11 of the last 16 games we've given up 2 or less. We've got about, I think, 9 more games to go before the trade deadline. I'm watching, but would I like to do something? Yes, I would like to do something. Am I convinced I'm going to do something? I don't know. I've got to work the phone lines and see. Eventually, you got to find a fit.
Good thing you're so flexible, Kenny. You can figure out all those gymnastics, no problem when it comes down to March 3rd. I'm curious about this, though. When we look at the Western Conference, I know kind of Colorado, if they get healthy, seems to be a daunting team. But other than that, you could convince me any number of 10 teams could represent the Western Conference in the final, you being one of them. Like, how do you factor in the opportunity of a kind of a wide open Western Conference when you're approaching the deadline, the opportunity of Leon and Connor and their contracts and how great they are being this year, and I know how long that lasts, who knows? Like, the opportunity that's in front of you or seems to be there when you decide how aggressive you want to be.
Well, I guess I've been around a long time, Mike. There are no guarantees. Right. So since 2005 and 6, there's been 16 President's Trophy winners. 16 teams have had the most points over 82 games. I think 2 teams won the cup. 2 of those 16. So 16 teams that had the most points over 82 games probably went into the playoffs as the odds-on favorite to win the Stanley Cup. 2 of those teams, and we're talking the best teams in the league. Mm-hmm. So you got to go in and you got to play your best hockey. I think the experience of us going to the Final Four last year and being down 3-2 in LA and winning that series and the emotional series with Calgary, and then we lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champions. In Colorado, I think for the previous 2-3 years had been building towards that moment. And I'd like to think that the experience that we went through last year of being in the Final Four, in the year before we lost out, I think, to Winnipeg, and I thought we played playoff hockey. 3 of the games went to overtime. You got to play a certain style. You got to, and I think the more times that you're in the playoffs, the more playoff games you play, the better the understanding for the individual, the better understanding for the team. That's how we got to play to win. So certainly when trades are made, you're trying to up the odds. You're trying to give yourself either more depth. You're trying to bring in a higher impact player to give you, but ultimately, you got to have a whole bunch of people play their best all together at the same time over a 2-month period. So certainly I weigh all that. Certainly that I understand. We got lots of players here in Edmonton that are in the primes of their career. I feel good. In the sense, I think we've built up depth. I saw something the other day in 1920, my first year here. I think when Connor and Leon weren't on the ice, our goal differential was -29. This year when Connor and Leon aren't on the ice, going into last night, our goal differential was +7. Over a 3-year period, that's a +36 goal differential, and we've still got 30 games to go this year to hopefully continue to add to that plus. So I think that we're building. We've spent 3 years, and I think I think it's a process. It's what I found in Detroit in my time there. It's a process. You got to keep building and building and having multiple opportunities. So you can't just say this is the one opportunity. I'm going to throw everything I've got, the kitchen sink at it. And then in September, we started all over again. So we've got to keep building, and I've got to have a feeling that when the time is right, when the opportunity is right, to try to make a deal that can impact the team. I've been here for 3 deadlines. My first deadline, Mike, I traded for Athanasiou, Mike Green, Tyler Ennis. The Canadian division, there was no opportunity to do any deals because the pandemic. Last year we traded a 2nd-round pick at the deadline for Kulak. We also made a deal for Broussard. So we've tried, the 2 years that I've been here, we've made deals. I made many deals in Detroit. I'm hoping to, but I never want to make it because I can't read the future. So I understand everything we're talking about, but it's everything's got to happen right. It's got to work.
Well, and you got to the heart of what I think is the delicate balance for you, Ken. I think back at some of the interviews that you did early on after taking over in Edmonton, and I think you had a pretty stated goal of wanting to, this is an organization before you got there, let me put it this way, that traded away a lot of prospects and draft picks. And I think part of your legacy here over time, I think, and, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you want to leave this team, whenever that is, in a better place that way. And yet it can be counterintuitive if you're meeting with your front office about the opportunities right now with, Leon and Connor at their in the height of their game to build a championship team. So those are two different things, aren't they? Building for the long term and having a chance to win now and sort of fitting the needle in and all that.
Yeah. Again, there is no magic wand or pixie dust or Stanley Cup dust that I'm just going to sort of throw at this thing, the one trade and we're going to win the Stanley Cup. But certainly many teams have won the Stanley Cup and have made a deal at the deadline that has been, we did it in Detroit, Larry Murphy at the trade deadline. And, next year, Jamie McCowan was a 4th round pick and he just happened to be the right fit with Bob Rouse. And, Brad Stewart at the second, in 2008, and he happened to be a perfect second pair fit with Nick Cronwell. So, and there's recent, I think Colorado did some deals last year. So I certainly understand that. I think the salary cap, in my mind, is as we go along, and this cap doesn't move, or 81.5, 82.5, 83.5 until it starts to move like it normally does, $4 to $5 million every year. It's going to have an impact on, the off season. It's going to have an impact on the trade deadline. So certainly, when the season opened, we had 21 players. 9 of them made $1.25 million or less. So many of those players have to be homegrown. To go to the market and think you're going to fill out 10 spots on your team and take $1 million and think you're going to sign 10 players for $1 million, it's not possible. So you've got to draft, you got to develop. That's got to be a key component to the success of your team. So all of this is a balancing act. All I do is I work the phones. We had our pro scout meetings. I've looked at our team. I'm going to keep watching our team and try to figure out a player that can have a positive impact, whether it's depth or whether it's more of a, top 4, top 5 defenseman or a, top 7 forward and see if we can make something happen. But, I've been around long. I've been able to do some of that sometimes I haven't.
Normally we try and have a little more fun on the pod, Kenny, but we're too close to trade deadline to mess around too much. So we're right down to meat and potatoes with you here, man. Listen, I just want to ask you quickly about Jesse Puljujärvi. There's been, lots over the last season, a couple of seasons about the potential for him to be moved. And with the cap situation being what it is and Yamamoto potentially coming back here, he's very much a hot button topic in town. Anything close on that front? And, do you expect this will be the time where maybe that deal finally comes to fruition?
Well, I've got to make some decisions here. Yamamoto is, obviously on LTI, and when he went on, Kane was on LTI and he came off, and then Yamamoto went on. So we've been able to keep all our players together. But, Yamo is eligible to come off on Saturday. Is the first game against Ottawa. Not sure he's going to be quite there. He's practicing. I kind of get a feel for it on Thursday, but. Once Yamamoto comes off of LTI, if nobody else goes on LTI, I've got some real difficult decisions to make. Certainly, Jesse's, all our, kind of bottom of the roster players are going to be involved in that decision to decide. They all can't stay. Someone's going to have to. At the start of the year, it was Janmark was on waivers. Janmark went to the American Hockey League. Janmark has come up and done a good job. He checks, kills penalties. So. We'll see. And certainly, Jesse was a healthy scratch last night. I think that I got some tough decisions to make.
It's funny, Ken. Real last one that everyone talks about: depth defenseman, depth forward, right? Like unless you're going to for a big one, which is hard to do as you. But yet lately, like your depth, Fogle last night, a couple goals, can't stop. Like, how do you feel about your depth? Of course, you always want to get better, but do you feel pretty good about how they're playing this last 6 weeks?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's like I get back to again, that minus 29 for the ball with Connor being on the ice in 19-20 to plus 7 today. So, I think the growth of McLeod, who's 23 years old. He got his ninth goal last night. He had the eighth or ninth goal, and he missed a month in there. So he might have 2 or 3 more if he would have been wouldn't have lost a month, 5 weeks with a high ankle sprain. And certainly Klim Kostin's been a good story for us. Janmark's a pro. He's been around the league for a long time and played in good teams in Dallas and Vegas, and has been in the playoffs. And so we got to get Yamamoto back, and then make some decisions on who's exactly going to be on the team. But I think that Dylan Holloway's a first round pick, that he brings us a dimension of speed and youth, and so I think that our bottom six is probably as good as it's been since I got here in 1920. And again, those players, Mike, are they don't make a lot of money, so for the most part,
even more valuable.
Yeah, they're really valuable, and if they can contribute, that helps you be a better team. And Holloway's homegrown, McLeod is homegrown. Whether it's Yessi or Yamo down there, they're homegrown. So a lot of those guys have to be homegrown. And as Pierre talked about, certainly I've traded a lot of draft picks away here, in the 2 seconds, and for Athanasiou, and I think a third in the Lucic deal, and a fourth with Green, and a fifth with Ennis, and a second with Kulak. So we're trying to win. I'm trying, as the general manager here, I understand where the players are at. I'm spending assets trying to, at the two trade deadlines, trying to give us a little bit of a boost to maximize our chance in the playoffs. But at the same time, when you look at the age of our players, they're not one-offs. Like we're going to have these players for next year. We want to have the same or better opportunity next year. So that's what I'm balancing, is trying to, be a playoff team year after year after year after year after year. That's also part of the formula ultimately to win a Stanley Cup. You can't make the playoffs twice in 10 years and think you're going to win the playoffs one of those years. You gotta be in the playoffs every year. And I feel that, the pandemic year we were going to be in, and then we had that play-in series with Chicago, but we were going to be in. We've really made the playoffs in my mind 3 years in a row, and we're in a battle now, and we've got to try to make it 4 years in a row. And all those experiences ultimately add up to any team, hopefully our team, but any team winning, eventually being the last team standing and winning the cup. It's being in the playoffs year after year after year, multiple chances and multiple disappointments, and the experiences of winning the Stanley Cup. And it's not just we're going to make one trade and we're going to hold a parade 3 months from now or 4 months from now. That's fantasy world. That's not the reality of how this league works. You played in the league, Mike. You know how hard this league is, and certainly. Broberg's 21 and Holloway's 21 and McLeod's 23. We got 30 more games to go. Those are you give Broberg another 30 games and Holloway another 30 games. They're almost doubling their amount of games in the National Hockey League, but you need those players, those types of younger, cheaper players, to be part of the solution.
But if you're making the one trade, Kenny, the one thing I would ask is you wait till March 3rd when we're on Trade Center on TSN. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
and getting great value at the top of the lineup too. I think about Hyman and Nugent Hopkins and their dollar figure and their contributions right now. Definitely, those Stanley Cup winning teams always have a couple of guys you look at and go, man, those are good contracts. And you've definitely got some of those near the top end of your lineup as well. Ken, thanks for taking some time here. We kept you longer than we expected, so we really appreciate it. Best of luck on the rest of the road trip.
Thanks, guys. Nice being with you.
Thanks, Ken.
That's going to wrap up the podcast for this week, folks. A big thanks to Oilers General Manager and President of Hockey Operations, Ken Holland. Going to be very interesting to see how he and his staff manage the upcoming NHL trade deadline. Big thanks to our sponsors, as always, Cross Country Canada, Supplies and Rentals, Pro Hockey Life, and, of course, our friends over at Liberty Smart Security. Appreciate your downloads and your subscriptions here on Got Your Back. If you get a chance, go leave us a review on iTunes. Johnny, Pierre, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast, good, bad, or indifferent. Look forward to chatting again real soon, folks. Cheers. Have a great day.